In this video, I'm going to showcase how to use and create custom targets for CamoEvo. We're going to source images from online. We're going to create a bilaterally symmetrical and a bilaterally asymmetrical target. Then we're going to introduce custom shaders, and we're going to introduce custom details using an alpha channel feature. To start, we're going to create an asymmetrical target. To do this, I've acquired a target picture from the internet, in this case, an African leopard. In order to make a new target, go into Plugins, One CamoEvo Targets. We want to create a new folder with the name of the target, in this case leopard. You will want to open up a copy of the target template image. I would recommend doing this in GIMP. I will add a download link to GIMP in the bottom tutorial. This is a free photo editing software akin to Photoshop. So this here is the target template. All targets should be 400 by 400 pixels in size, and it gives a line for the center point for bilateral symmetry. Within the leopard folder, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the targets image, grasshopper, could be any one of these, and I'm just going to paste this in. I'm going to open it up to edit. Here we go. So as you can see here, this target image is actually a layer mask. Everything that's in the white will be visible with the pattern elements included, and everything in the black will be excluded and will not be copy pasted onto the background. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a mask for this leopard. The easiest way of doing that is to start by just adjusting the brightness of the leopard itself, just to make the outline clearer to yourself. Go into Layer, New Layer, and I'm going to outline in black and then invert it later. So what you can do is either with the pencil tool, you can decrease the size of the pencil and trace around it like this, or using the lasso or free select tool, you can select multiple points and do it this way, and then fill in the selection once it's complete. I'm going to use this method, although I do sometimes prefer to use the pencil tool, especially when there are lots of loose parts that I want to draw in manually. And there we finally managed to select all this. I've neglected to select the back leg. That's fine. So I'm actually going to delete this front leg here. So now that I've got my mask, I'm just going to copy, paste it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take where this mask is here. I'm going to add a new layer. As you can see, it doesn't quite fit. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select it. I'm going to lock the aspect ratio, and I'm going to scale it down using the scale tool here. So now that's much more in line with the size I want it to be. I'm going to copy and paste the target template, paste that to the layer below. As you can see, this fits nicely within. I'm going to invert this. And as you can see here, it looks a bit awkward because you've got this nice back leg, which is nice and straight. There's no other back leg. Meanwhile, you've got these two other legs which are forming a sort of V shape. I don't want this to be the case. I'm going to take the eraser tool. I'm going to increase the size of it slightly, and I'm just going to rub that out. Now I've got one leg that's slightly awkward in terms of how far forward it is. What I'm just going to do, just going to select this rubber band round. Now that I've made a copy of it, I'm going to undo what I've done. I'm going to delete this front leg. So we're essentially making a shoulder. This is a nice attachment point. And then I'm going to paste this back and rotate it inside of the mask. So now it looks like this. What you can do, if you want to make this more reliably, you can introduce a new layer, paste it in below, get it in line with this foot here so it's nice and flat, and then paste it in. You can do it in black, but I'm going to do it in red. And then go back to pasting this. So you get something like this. What I'm just going to do, I'm just going to cut that, rotate this forward, just to make the foot nice and flat. And there we go, we made a nice leopard mask here. Now I'm happy with the posture of it. I'm going to remove that layer. I'm going to add a layer behind it. I'm going to just fill this in with black. And what I'm then going to do is I'm going to right click on the layer here. I'm going to merge it down. So there we go. And then I'm going to color threshold. And the result, you can adjust this just to try and smooth it out. You should get a shape that looks like this. You may get the odd jagged edge, which you don't want, in which case just take the pen tool, make it narrow, so 1 pixel, and just fill those bits in black. There we go. So now we've made our leopard outline. I'm just going to save that. So now within the leopards folder, or the leopard folder, we've just got a target here. What I'm going to now do is I'm going to go to target settings. I'm going to make a copy of default circle, which is an example of an asymmetrical pattern. I'm going to rename the copy custom leopard. I'm going to change the target shape, circle to leopard. And I'm not going to change any of the other settings. To test this works, open up ImageJ. And then go plugins, one CamoEvo, phenotype maker. I will give a tutorial shortly on using the phenotype maker. Scroll down to the target settings so it's custom leopard, and keep the pattern settings as animals. For the color space, this doesn't really matter for now. We're just going to let it create a random genotype. So as you can see here, we now have a randomly generated pattern that's put on the leopard body plan. I'm just going to make a few more just for fun. As you can see, this is working nicely. Do note that with this current color space, it will produce colors that are impossible for a big cat to make. So if you are interested in doing something that actually involves leopards or big cats, I recommend narrowing the color space to one that's more sensible. For example, with a big cat, you will want to heavily restrict the A and B ranges. So negative A values are green. I'm just going to go -2 for that, and then make the maximum and then positive values are red. So we're only going to go about 30 in. Same goes for blue B value, so -2 would be blue, and then above, or bluish grey, and then above that is going to be going yellow. So we're going to also have a similar range. We're going to go 45 for the yellow. There we go. We're getting nice orange in here. One of the issues with such a system using LAB colors is it's not actually limited in the same way that pigments are. So we're getting these pinkish colors. That's because if you want to produce bright orange, you need to have a high red value and a high yellow value. But if these two values go off independently of one another, then you are going to produce these extremes that wouldn't otherwise exist. In the future, I may instead introduce a radial color space, which has some advantages and disadvantages, or allow for people to create their own custom three-dimensional spaces. But yes, we are happy with that color space. And as we can see, we are generating some nice random big cat patterns on a leopard template. Okay, so now that we've made that, I will introduce how to add a alpha element. So what we're going to do just for the leopard in this instance is we're going to go back to the original target. We're going to keep this mask by copying it while not selecting anything so that we don't lose the location. Add the layer back in, paste that down there, move this layer below, then we're just going to select everything within that layer and just copy this. I'm going to make a new layer above our target. I'm going to rescale this leopard until it fits on top of here. Ideally, you would have copied this over beforehand and then thresholded it. However, for this demo, we're just going to do it like this. Well, that's not quite perfectly aligned. That will do for this demonstration. I'm just going to increase the opacity value. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in some detailing. So in this instance, what I'm interested in adding is just an eye. I'm just going to draw this in. And I'm going to add in the nose as well. And perhaps, yeah. Okay. Now if we get rid of that, what we've essentially done is we've added in this little outline here. We can either add this as an alpha or a detail, I should say, or we can add this as a shader. We're going to add this in as a shader actually. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the white outline. I'm going to add a layer below this. And I'm going to fill this in with 50 gray value. So this is equivalent to 127 RGB or 128 RGB. And it's important to make sure that that outline is the same as this. I'm going to save this as shader. I'm also going to make a copy, a duplicate of the going to target. So I'm going to make a duplicate of the target. I'm just going to rename this outline. Okay. Now that that shader has been added, if we go back to the phenotype maker, you don't actually need to reload this every time, so we're going to keep this open. you can see that nothing has actually been added. The reason why nothing's been added is we need to go into the target settings, and to the left of where the bilateral option is a alpha value for the shader and for the details. So we're going to just set these to 1. And now you can see that this has been added. The way shaders work is they are essentially having you subtract the inverse of the target pattern onto a white value. So the darker something is, the lower something is relative to the 127 RGB value, the darker it's going to be, and the higher it is above 127, the lighter it's going to be. As you can see here, you might not actually be happy with how the ear is done. It might be too harsh for you. So what you can do is you can either decrease the opacity of all of it. So we're just going to down that to 0.8. As you can see, the whole thing is sort of masked out, and while that looks good, we want to make the ear less visible compared to everything else. So we're going to go back to this layer. We're going to select the layer that has the ear details, and we're just going to take the smudge tool. And we're just going to smudge that in like that. One thing you can do is you can create false edge highlights by just going in with a very low opacity white brush and just going over like that. Accomplish it on both sides as well. So there we go. That's our ear. And we're going to add something similar just in dark above the eye, just to add a bit of a brow. And we'll do something slightly similar for the nose. And there we go. That's our shader. So now if we reload this, we don't make any changes to the genes. As you can see here, it looks a little bit better. Just going to make a few random ones just to see what it looks like. What you can also do is you can introduce more details. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to fully detail this out. You do not have to do this. In fact, I don't recommend doing this in all instances, but I'm actually just going to make a quick shader, just outlining a few of the key features. So I'm going to add shader just to make the start of the front leg a bit clearer. And add a shader to make the back leg a bit clearer. And the underside of the tail. I'm going to take the smudge tool. I'm just going to smudge that like that. Just add a bit of a gradient. Smudge in, smudge up, smudge in, smudge up. For the skull outline, I'm really going to smudge along. And it helps to do some jagged edges and to refill in a tiny bit every now and again. So this is just going to add a bit of an outline for the head. So now we've got a bit more shading. What we can also do is we can enforce counter shading. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a white tool. I'm going to change the brush to be one that has a bit more of a fainter outline. And I'm just going to go in like this. You can do the opposite. You can enforce actual shading, but given the fact that there isn't a counter shading mask designed for this particular pattern, I wouldn't recommend it. So I'm just going to add a bit of white to the legs as well. There we go. And then what you want to do is just select the black mask. Just make sure you don't have anything that goes outside. I'm just going to use the smudge tool to clean this up a bit. Okay. With our leopard shader, we can also add a similar path to the back of it. So what I'm going to do is actually I'm going to select this, go back to the shader layer, I'm going to make it invert, so I'm going to Control I. So now if I were to like delete, it would delete just this. I'm just going to use this to fill in the top a little bit, just to add a bit of a enforced lighting. Sorry, to enforce the shading with more subtle elements, I'm just going to do a black just along the top. And I'm just going to make the brush much larger, go quite far away, and you get this nice effect. There we go. So I'm just going to save that. And now, if I reload this pattern, you can see it's got a bit of an underbelly. You can see the underbelly doesn't go that white though. You can go through some additional methods. Okay, so one alternative or addition is, say we wanted to make the underbelly really white, and we want to introduce color, so we can instead introduce a detail layer. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a copy of this mask. Sorry, I'm going to go back to this here, and I'm going to use this gray outline, deleting the shader layer to give me a sense of what I'm going to do. I'm going to export this as detail, just so I don't forget. Sorry, as detail alpha. And what I'm going to do with this layer here is I'm just going to add, using the leopard as a reference, so you can see it gets a bit light down there and it gets a bit light there. And it gets lighter on the tail. Just going to add in something like this. Just along here. I'm going to use the mask in order to delete everything that goes outside of that. I'm just going to use the eraser, low opacity, just to smooth that out a bit, just to make it a bit better along the outline. And I can copy and paste it to double down. Cool. Now that I'm happy with that, or I'm just going to smooth that last bit out. Tiny bit more. Use the smudge a bit as well. I'm going to get rid of the grey layer. I'm going to get rid of that mask layer. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new layer, put it behind this layer, and I'm just going to fill it in with black. So this is our detail alpha. And now I'm going to make a new image, so Control New, and I'm going to just fill this in with white. So this is my detail. ImageJ does not have a alpha component to .bng files, otherwise I would do this directly in ImageJ. Now if I remake this, I'm going to make a new one. You can see we now get this lovely white effect. If you wanted, you could make this a different color, just to showcase how this works. So I'm going to make it bright blue. Just going to save that. As you can see, that's now blue, but we don't want that to be blue. You might think that the tail and the legs are a bit too extreme. So you can either go in and edit the image, or you can go back to this setting here. And for the alpha, we'll just bring that down to 0.5. There we go. That's a little bit too much. We'll go to 0.8 like we did with the shader. And there we go. So we can make a few different random patterns just to see how they look. So that's an example of how we can do the shader in detail. We're now just going to make a bilaterally symmetrical target using the same techniques we've done already. I'm just going to close down all these images. I sometimes like to save them as a layered image, but I'm not going to do that in this instance. I'll do that in the second instance. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to the circle. I'm just going to copy the target shape. I'll make a new folder. I'm going to call it butterfly. This will be our bilaterally symmetrical target. I'll open up that image. I'm going to copy the target template on top of it. New layer. Now we're going to learn from what we learned with the leopard. Now we've got an advantage here with the butterfly in that it's already an image that's on a white background. So rather than using the lasso select, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a box that just goes into the middle. Then I'm going to select this tool here, which is select by color. And I'm going to control click. Control clicking deselects. So what we ended up with is this selection here. I'm going to cut that, paste this onto the new layer here. I'm going to line it up like this. As you can see, it doesn't quite fit. So we're just going to click on the scale tool, click on this image here, and shrink it down a tiny bit. So there we go, that fits nicely. Just going to put that directly on that line there. I'm going to copy, paste, and then flip horizontally. So this is our image. I'm going to make a new layer. Rename that mask. So this is me doing it in a much more organized fashion. I'll make another new layer. I'm just going to call it background. Fill the background layer in black and put it above the target layer. I'm going to make a copy of this layer, which I'm also going to rename as butterfly. I'm going to paste it to mask. I'm going to go color. So I'm going to go color, levels, output level, and then shove that all the way down to this. So now this is all in white. I'm going to copy background layer, move that up, and I'm going to right click this and go merge down. You'll name that mask. So go color threshold. So this is our target template. I'm going to go back to the target settings notepad. I'm going to make a copy of the default crab, which is a bilaterally symmetrical target. Actually, I'll copy the leopard. Rename it custom butterfly. Replace leopard with butterfly. And where it says bilateral, I'm going to go yes. That's done. And now if I go plugins, one CamoEvo, phenotype maker, custom butterfly, and keep animal patterns. Because butterflies can go green, we'll go -30. We can go blue, so we'll go -30. and they go quite yellow, so we'll go 60. In fact, they go quite red, so we'll go 60 for that as well. This is our butterfly color space. And what you can see here is that butterfly pattern there is quite asymmetrical. So why is that? If I go to plugins, one CamoEvo, targets, target settings, so that's yes, that's 0.8, that's what's going on here. Just going to make sure this has all been copied correctly. Just going to take the copy of the moth here, which is asymmetrical. Place all that in. That's working properly. So what's happened there is the number of indents has been messed up. So I'm just going to replace the moth with butterfly now. As you can see, the butterfly patterns are now symmetrical. Also, in a similar fashion to the leopard, introduce set patterns. So what I'm going to do is just make a new layer, call it eye spot. I'm going to go to the mask, look at where these eye spot, look at where this lovely red marking is here. I'm just going to copy it, paste it here, add this layer back in. I don't want that white, so I'm just going to get rid of that using the eraser tool. I'm going to copy it, just mirror it by copying and pasting and then flipping horizontally. If you copy and paste the whole area, then it should flip towards the center. I'll now do is just get rid of these and export this detail. As you can see here, there's still a bit of yellow on the outline, so I'm just going to take the pen tool. Scrub that out in black. Actually, I'll scrub that out with the eraser tool. Undid that, redoing it with the eraser. So that's the detail. Now I'm just going to color levels, go all the way up, file, export, detail, alpha. Copy that, layer, alpha, spot. So I've kept all this, and I'm going to go File, instead of Export as, Save as. I'm going to go to where I've kept all of the butterfly details. So we'll go Butterfly. We'll just save this as Butterfly. And so you can reopen these layers in GIMP. So now, if I regenerate this butterfly, you get those wing patterns forced on top of it. So that's how we create custom patterns, and that's how we can edit the alpha details and edit the shading.